There's a lot in life that feels like it should be guaranteed but isn't. Like getting the same number of socks from the dryer that you put in, a pair of jeans still fitting, weather forecast, or an empty nest staying empty. AT&T is introducing a new guarantee you can count on, the AT&T Guarantee, offering connectivity that you can depend on, deals you want, and service you deserve, or they'll make it right. Visit att.com/guarantee to learn more. AT&T, connecting changes everything. Terms and conditions apply. Visit att.com/guarantee for details.
A vibrant and determined man is on the brink of transforming his life while navigating the intricate dynamics of friendship. He is on his way to pursue his dream of stardom, but suddenly, everything changes with an unexpected call. What altered the course of his journey? And what happens when love becomes fatal? This is a Fatal Attraction podcast with his final act.
November 23rd, 2018. It's Friday night in Cobb County, Georgia, a fast-growing community northwest of Atlanta.
People think of it being part of Atlanta, and it really is, but it's more the suburbs just outside the perimeter.
You don't have the traffic that you have in the city. It's a great place to live and relax and enjoy life.
Especially on the day after Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving should usually be filled with family and love.
But while most folks in Cobb County are still celebrating, one man is fighting for his life.
A little bit before 9:30 in the evening, Mitchell Jones calls 911.
911, what's your emergency?
I'm bleeding. Please help me.
He was barely breathing, gasping for air.
He's unable to relay information to the operator.
Where are you, sir? What's your address?
Please. I'm dying.
The 911 call itself was very sad, very hard to hear.
But he never gives the operator his location.
911 operators actually do some triangulation to figure out where that call was being placed from.
Officers are on the scene within 15 minutes.
When first responders make it to the crime scene, they enter the home.
The front door is unlocked.
Please help. I'm bleeding.
Inside, there's a trail of blood leading upstairs.
They could hear Mitchell from the bedroom upstairs. When they went to open the door, they found that it was locked.
Before the 911 call, Mitchell had barricaded himself in his own bedroom. He had locked the door, and they had to force entry.
On the other side of the door, the officers find a nightmare.
It's blood everywhere, and they have this person laying there like on his back, and he's gasping for air.
Officers rush to Mitchell's aid and press him for vital information.
They asked him, who did this to you?
Unfortunately, he doesn't tell them.
He kept saying, I don't know him, I don't know him.
Paramedics!
31-year-old Mitchell Jones Jr. grew up far from Atlanta.
Mitchell grew up in Erie, Pennsylvania, in a family of 15 children.
He liked being around people. He liked being the center of attention.
He had an amazing personality, and everybody loved him. Everybody knew him from his smile. Mitchell had dreams to become an actor, and not just an actor, but a successful actor.
So he came to Atlanta, chasing those dreams.
Atlanta in recent years has grown enormously and turned almost into another Hollywood on the East Coast.
He started out as an extra with the hopes of becoming the next Kevin Hart or the next Denzel Washington. And what better place to do that than Atlanta? It's where every Black actor comes now.
Mitchell rented a townhouse in the Cobb County suburbs, worked a series of retail jobs, and auditioned for every role available.
Mitchell went all in. He did whatever he needed to do. He was taking advantage of all those opportunities and trying to make it in any way that he could.
It was a way for him to break away from what he knew in Erie.
No, I'm still looking, actually.
However, the chance to break into show business wasn't the city's only attraction.
For members of the LGBTQIA+ community, Atlanta has become a safe haven.
It's a pretty progressive city. It's one that's very inclusive, and that's why I think a lot of people gravitate towards the Atlanta community and want to come here.
Coming from a small town, he probably lived, a double life, and moving to Atlanta, it's like he found his freedom.
Free to be out in Atlanta, Mitchell threw himself into the city's vibrant club scene.
Mitchell was a fun-loving guy. He was young, he was single.
He was always out partying, and he was able to meet so many different people.
But now, after a desperate call to 911, police have found Mitchell on his bedroom floor in a pool of blood.
He was trying his very best to report to police what had happened to him, but because of his condition, he wasn't able to give a lot of details.
He took my phone. Who took your phone? Who did this to you? He took it. Please help.
Investigators are kind of confused because if his phone was taken, how is he dialing 911?
They hoped the attacker had mistakenly taken the wrong phone, and it would possibly give them a lead on their name.
Hey, we need to go to the hospital.
While EMTs rushed Mitchell to the hospital, detectives arrived to sort out the first piece of the puzzle.
Thought he couldn't find his phone. It appeared it was from an old cell phone of Mitchell's that still had the capability of calling 911.
Any cell phone, whether you have service or not, if it still has a SIM card, you can call 911.
The phone doesn't reveal the attacker's name, but whoever it was, it looks like Mitchell had been expecting them.
There were candles that had been lit.
This was not a scene that showed any forced entry or anything like that.
Which means he invited this person in.
This could have started as a hookup.
In a gripping tale of intrigue, tireless detectives come together to unravel the mystery of the betrayal. Stay tuned for more of the Fatal Attraction podcast.
Get the Angel Reese special at McDonald's now. Let's break it down. My favorite barbecue sauce, American cheese, crispy bacon, pickles, onions, and a sesame seed bun, of course. And don't forget the fries and a drink. Sound good? Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
At participating restaurants for a limited time.
31-year-old Mitchell Jones Jr. had moved to the Atlanta area to break into show business.
Atlanta is a very up-and-coming area for movies, television.
It's grown into the Hollywood of the South, and it's a place where people come to chase their dreams.
And as a young gay man, Mitchell found another opportunity in Atlanta, the chance to be himself.
People from all over the world come to Atlanta to be able to live freely.
But now, after a desperate call to 911, police have found Mitchell viciously attacked in his own home.
Mitchell phones 911 and lets them know that he is dying and needs help immediately.
Unfortunately, because of Mitchell's condition, he wasn't able to give the detail that we needed to advance the investigation.
All the police know is that his attacker was male.
He took my phone.
Who took your phone?
He took it.
While Mitchell is rushed to the hospital, detectives survey the crime scene.
There was no sign of forced entry.
Somebody was let in or they had a key.
The nature of the attack also tells detectives it was personal.
Mitchell had been stabbed so many times that they couldn't even give an actual count for the number of times that he'd been stabbed.
That shows passion, that shows aggression. There's some relationship between the two.
But the viciousness of the attack isn't all that suggests an intimate connection.
The perpetrator had taken his cell phone, and that was a significant lead for us.
Maybe Mitchell had been in communication with his attacker, and they were trying to get rid of the evidence.
Another major clue is the fact that Mitchell was attacked in his bedroom.
It appeared there was a struggle. There was sheets and blankets thrown off. There were items scattered all over the bedroom. Every single wall in that bedroom had blood on it.
This was a very bloody crime scene, and one of the bloodiest that I've ever seen.
There's also the trail of blood the first responders noticed leading down the stairs to the front door.
Mitchell locked himself in the bedroom, so there's no way he would have walked down and left a trail of blood. So this trail of blood had to have come from whomever committed this crime.
When a subject uses a knife on somebody, there's a high likelihood that they're going to cut themselves.
This is a big break for the investigators.
With suspect blood, we have DNA.
If they can match this blood to DNA in their database, then they can identify who did this.
Leaving CSI to finish cataloging the scene, detectives start knocking on neighbors' doors.
We'll knock on doors, seeing if there's any video cameras, seeing if anybody was awake, if anybody heard anything, if anybody knew the victim.
In this instance, detectives are in luck.
His next door neighbor was very helpful. She was really close to Mitchell. They hung out a lot.
But the neighbor says she wasn't the only one who hung out at Mitchell's.
Yeah, he had guys over a lot. Guys? Yeah.
He had revealed to her that he happened to be gay and that he was dating people. On occasion, she would see some of the people that he was dating come and visit him at the house.
Well, did you see anyone here tonight?
No, not tonight.
Is there anyone he had a problem with?
Not that he mentioned.
There was nobody that she could pinpoint that would make you believe could very well be the suspect.
Although she is able to give detectives another name.
She told us that if anybody would know who did this to Mitchell would be his friend Owen.
She said that Owen was someone that came over to Mitchell's pretty regularly.
Is that one of Mitchell's boyfriends?
I'm really not sure.
Do you have a last name for Owen?
No, I'm sorry.
Despite that, the neighbor's tip could be an important lead.
We knew that Owen would be the person to reach out to and try to get more information on Mitchell's lifestyle or anybody he had met recently or any problem he had had with anyone.
But as they continue their canvass, the detectives find something that may prove even more useful.
On our initial canvass of the neighborhood, we did see a security camera at a townhouse across the street from Mitchell Jones's house.
Back at the station, when detectives review the footage, they find what they're looking for at a little after 9 o'clock.
It captured a vehicle pulling into Mitchell Jones's residence.
Then, a few minutes before Mitchell made his 911 call, the video showed the car pulling away from his place.
If they can identify the owner of this car, then they can identify the person who committed this crime.
The captivating clues continue as detectives navigate more twists and turns. Stay tuned for more of the Fatal Attraction podcast.
Detectives believe they've uncovered evidence that could lead them to whoever attacked Mitchell Jones Jr. in his suburban Atlanta townhouse.
A neighbor's security camera caught a vehicle leaving the scene just moments before Mitchell dialed 911.
Unfortunately, it isn't case closed.
The camera footage was not very clear. It was low light, plus there was a lot of distance between the camera and the video.
Can't see the license plate.
Investigators weren't able to make out the license plates. However, they were able to identify that it was a dark-colored sedan, and it was a very specific type of sedan.
We could see the taillights, and that was one of the things that helped us.
But as detectives are digging in to try to ID the vehicle and its driver, they receive grim news from the hospital.
Mitchell Jones was actually on the operating table at the hospital when he died.
This is no longer an assault. This is now turned into a homicide case.
The autopsy reveals just how savagely Mitchell had been attacked.
His liver had been punctured, his lung had been punctured, his aorta punctured. He sustained numerous life-threatening injuries.
This was an exceedingly malicious murder. It takes a lot of work to inflict the level of trauma that Mitchell suffered.
Their only eyewitness dead. The following morning, detectives reach out to Mitchell's family in Pennsylvania with the tragic news.
Hello? Mitchell's family was devastated by the unexpected loss of their loved one. It was just a heartbreaking event for them.
Your son, Mitchell.
Despite their grief, they do their best to help.
We always want to go to family members and say, hey, who could have possibly done this? Who would have had any ill will towards your loved one?
Mitchell's mom and dad were very cooperative.
They were able to give us a little bit of background about Mitchell, but more than anything, he had the same questions that we had. How did this happen, and who could have possibly done this to their son?
We really didn't know too much about his life down there. Who he was dating or anything.
But for detectives, that's the focus of their investigation.
We knew this person had to know him for Mitchell to feel comfortable to let him in his own house, invite him to his bedroom.
Detectives start by trying to identify the one lead they have, Mitchell's friend, Owen.
Mitchell's neighbor had identified Owen as someone that Mitchell hung out with regularly.
She'd believed that they had dated for a little while.
The trick will be finding him.
The detectives didn't have Owen's last name, and since the killer took Mitchell's phone, they couldn't look him up in the contacts either.
Thankfully, Mitchell's social media yields more information.
Ultimately, they came up with the name of Owen Ferguson.
Owen, yeah, this is Detective Grimstead, and he told you about Mitchell.
But he's not talking.
When they call him on the phone, he hangs up. So they start to wonder, if he's a friend of Mitchell's, why is he evading contact with investigators?
Could Owen be Mitchell's killer? Or is there another reason he's avoiding the police?
They discovered that he had a warrant out for his arrest due to a recent violation of probation.
Because he had the outstanding warrant, we were able to place him under arrest and bring him back to our office for an interview.
Once in the interview room, Owen still isn't eager to cooperate.
He isn't very forthcoming with information. They continue to have suspicions as to why he doesn't want to help them.
He was your friend, right?
Yeah. Was he maybe more than just a friend?
When we pressed Owen on their relationship, he did finally admit that they were romantic when Mitchell first moved.
But they had decided that they would be better off as friends.
He wasn't the one for long-term relationships, you know what I'm saying?
Owen let them know Mitchell was that type of person who parties and he brings people home. And reality is, it could have been anybody that particular night that was there.
And what about you? Where were you that Friday night?
Owen insists he had nothing to do with Mitchell's death.
At about 9 o'clock that night, he and some friends had met up and went clubbing, and they were out until at least 2:30 in the morning.
Open up.
At the end of the interview, detectives collect a sample of Owen's DNA to compare against the blood found at the crime scene. But before they escort him out, Owen offers another name to detectives.
Have y'all talked to Amber?
Amber? Amber who?
Amber Clinton.
Amber was a close friend of Mitchell Jones. She comes from the same general area in Pennsylvania.
They would spend time together. She would oftentimes take him out, show him around, allow him to get acclimated to the new city life.
While waiting for the DNA results for Owen, detectives follow up on the lead.
I reached out to Amber and explained to her what was going on.
She is in shock and disbelief that this has happened to her friend.
She was extremely cooperative and she provided us information.
Information that could solve the case.
Amber said, was it forced entry? Because I know he wouldn't have opened a door for that boy.
I'm sorry, what did you say? I knew that boy was trouble.
In a gripping tale of intrigue, tireless detectives come together to unravel the mystery of the betrayal. Stay tuned for more of the Fatal Attraction podcast.
Get the Angel Reese special at McDonald's now. Let's break it down. My favorite barbecue sauce, American cheese, crispy bacon, pickles, onions, and a sesame seed bun, of course. And don't forget the fries and a drink. Sound good? Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
At participating restaurants for a limited time.
Detectives in Cobb County, Georgia have been pursuing every lead to solve the murder of aspiring actor Mitchell Jones Jr. And now, a distraught friend of Mitchell's is on the verge of giving them a strong new suspect.
I knew that boy was trouble.
She just kept saying that boy, that he had a problem with the boy.
She told us that she didn't know the person's name, but this guy was very violent towards Mitchell, had a very volatile character.
Why didn't he mention his name? He was kind of private about his relationships.
But she let them know that it was a toxic relationship. It was tumultuous. And it was a situation that Mitchell should not be in.
I told him he needed to get out of it. God.
They had broken up about 3 weeks before the murder.
If he had been upset, this could be something that he may come back and, try to hurt Mitchell.
Detectives ask Amber to tell them everything she can about Mitchell's mysterious ex-boyfriend.
She described him as a light-skinned black male with a scar under his eye.
Is there anything else? Well, wait a minute.
As Amber was talking and she thought about it, she realized, I may not know his name, but I may be able to show you what he looks like.
She had a picture of him that Mitchell had sent her.
The man in the photo has some distinctive tattoos.
The person had several tattoos on his chest and on his shoulder, and one of the tattoos he had was "Rest in Peace," and it had a name on there and a date.
But is that enough to track down the mystery man's identity? It takes a few days, but finally detectives get a promising lead.
I started to look into social media and look at hashtags of "Rest in Peace" with that name that he had on the tattoo with that date.
They are able to come up with a name.
The man with the tattoos is 29-year-old Trey Brown.
They run a criminal background on him, and his criminal history suggests that he could very well be the suspect in this murder.
I located a report where he had been in an altercation with an ex-boyfriend and had a knife and was trying to stab his ex-boyfriend.
Very strong coincidence there. You've threatened somebody with a knife before, and now one of your lovers is killed with a knife.
This fits our crime perfectly.
Now, all detectives have to do is find Trey.
We attempted to contact him and talk to him on the phone and ask him to come in for an interview.
I was hoping if you were down in Atlanta, we could go ahead and just meet with you.
Right. Let me hear your contact when I go.
He really didn't want to cooperate and made it even more suspicious that he had something to do with Mitchell's death.
When the detectives tried to insist that he talk to him, he basically hung up on them.
I'll tell you what contact you guys. Enjoy your day.
Luckily for detectives, Trey's criminal record gives them a little leverage.
Trey had an outstanding warrant for a violation of probation.
It was the same way they managed to bring in Mitchell's friend, Owen Ferguson.
We were able to ask the U.S. Marshal to have him picked up for us.
Once detectives have Trey inside the interview room, he remains uncooperative.
He would give basic information, but not really give a whole lot.
While in questioning, Trey downplayed his entire relationship with Mitchell, that it wasn't even really that serious.
He did admit knowing Mitchell, but made it sound like they were more of a friends rather than, boyfriend and boyfriend.
Were there any problems between you?
Nah, no problems.
And he tells investigators that he knows nothing about the murder, he has nothing to do with the murder.
I didn't even know about it until you guys called me.
He never gave that vibe of being upset that we're accusing him of Mitchell's murder. He just continued to give basic information, say that he had nothing to do with it, and would not provide anything else as far as where he was at the time of the murder.
With Trey stonewalling them,
Open your mouth.
detectives take a sample of his DNA, then subpoena his phone records.
There were a lot of calls to Mitchell.
The contact stopped about 2 weeks before the murder.
That fit with what detectives knew about Trey and Mitchell's breakup.
However, something else in Trey's phone records catches detectives' eye.
Investigators were also able to see another number that Trey was in constant contact with.
Could there be another person involved in this murder?
Once we started looking at that phone number that Trey had been talking to, we were able to identify him.
The number belongs to 27-year-old Xavion Benson.
Detectives eventually find Xavion's address.
They go to the house to question Xavion.
And as they're walking up to the front door, detectives realize that the car sitting in the driveway looks eerily familiar.
They see that the car in the driveway matches the car that was captured on cam driving away from the scene of the crime.
The camera footage was not great enough for us to see a tag, but it was enough to say that, hey, these are the same vehicles, same make and model.
Have they found their guy?
The captivating clues continue as detectives navigate more twists and turns. Stay tuned for more of the Fatal Attraction podcast.
Get the Angel Special at McDonald's now. Let's break it down. My favorite barbecue sauce, American cheese, crispy bacon, pickles, onions, and a sesame seed bun, of course. And don't forget the fries and a drink. Sound good? Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
At participating restaurants for a limited time.
Detectives investigating Mitchell Jones Jr.'s murder believe they may have found the car a neighbor's security camera recorded fleeing the crime scene.
It was parked outside the home of a man detectives had identified as a contact of Mitchell's ex, Trey Brown.
Trey had been in constant contact with 27-year-old Xavion Benson.
After checking out the car, the detectives knock on Xavion's door.
We were able to come inside and speak to Xavion.
He seems to be going along with everything. He's offering information. He's cooperating.
How can I help y'all?
At least up to a point.
However, when they ask Xavion if he knows someone named Trey Brown, he says he doesn't know who this person is.
No, I don't know.
He said, I've never heard of the name.
Well, your number keeps popping up in his phone records.
Repeatedly.
Really?
I repeated his phone number for him, and he said, yeah, that's my phone number. I decided to show Xavion a picture of Trey and see if he'd know him that way. As soon as I showed him the picture of Trey, he said, oh yeah, I play Xbox with that guy.
So you do know him?
Sort of. We play on Xbox together. I'll show you. Look.
He says, I just know him through his username. I don't know him by his real name.
He was able to provide us all of the game chats, and it showed that this was truly just two gamers that knew each other.
And contrary to Trey's phone records, Xavion says they've never actually spoken on the phone.
Trey was using his cell phone to connect to his Xbox as a Wi-Fi hotspot, so that picked up as the calls between Xavion and Trey.
And Mitchell Jones Jr.? According to Xavion, that's another name he's never heard.
Xavion lets investigators know that he had absolutely nothing to do with Mitchell's murder and that he would cooperate to the fullest extent.
Can we take a look at your car? Yeah, come on.
Even giving investigators permission to search his car.
They don't find any blood. They don't find any indication that he may have gotten the car clean to try and hide something.
It turns out that the car that was very similar was pure coincidence.
It was frustrating because we had so much circumstantial evidence, but every single one is not panning out.
After talking to Xavion, detectives are still convinced Trey Brown is their killer. But all they can do is wait on the forensics lab.
All investigators have to lean on is the DNA that was recovered from the scene.
We knew that had to be the suspect's blood, so we asked that the GBI rush the results to see if it would match to Trey's DNA.
But when the DNA results come in, they're shocking.
There was no match.
The prime suspect has just been ruled out.
It frustrated us. He fits the crime perfectly. He's got the relationship. He's got the prior aggravated assault with the knife.
The DNA also isn't a match for Mitchell's friend, Owen Ferguson.
We had to start back from square one and see who else Mitchell had been talking to and who could have done this to him.
With their three strongest suspects now definitively cleared, months pass as the leads dry up.
It just became more frustrating because now we're into, several months after the homicide occurred, and the longer it goes on, the less leads we're able to find.
Then, nearly 3 months after Mitchell's murder, detectives learn of a new technology that could reignite the investigation.
The incident occurred in November, and in February, we learned about this new technology that's called geofence.
Geofencing is the idea that you can create a virtual fence around a particular location, and you can ask third-party cellular providers to identify any users that were in that particular location.
But it can also be used as a crime-fighting tool.
Third-party carriers and cell phone providers are actually collecting a lot of data from your handset, whether you're using it or not.
Detectives work with several tech companies to determine all the cell phones that were in the vicinity of the crime scene at the time of the murder. The results yield just 4 phone numbers.
We were able to determine these numbers could be the suspects in Mitchell Jones's homicide.
3 of them were quickly eliminated because they lived in the neighborhood, and then there was one individual that was a mystery to us.
Detectives trace the mystery number to 22-year-old Dante Holmes.
Before the geofence search warrant, Dante Holmes wasn't even on our radar.
When detectives run Dante's name by Mitchell's friends, none of them has ever heard of him.
There was a very good possibility Mitchell didn't know his name either.
There's so many dating apps, and a lot of times on those, people usually hide their identity.
Dante's name isn't in any law enforcement database either.
He did not have a criminal record.
The only place detectives find anything of interest is in his DMV records.
Detectives find that Dante owned a car that was very similar to the one that was seen on the neighbor's camera.
We learned also that he sold the vehicle right after the murder happened.
Dante's cell phone data also provides another powerful piece of evidence, an odd photo in his cloud storage.
There was a picture taken of an ankle that had been injured, and we knew the suspect may have gotten hurt due to the blood spatter that was found on scene.
It's enough to get a warrant for Dante's arrest.
When detectives brought Dante in for questioning, he immediately denied knowing Mitchell.
Never heard of him before.
Detectives show him a picture.
That made Dante have to take a step back and admit that he did know him.
So, this is Mitchell?
Yeah.
He never told me his name.
He says we hook up from time to time.
They'd met on a dating app.
Once Dante acknowledges that he knows Mitchell, the detectives turn up the heat.
Detectives asked Dante, would it surprise him to learn that Mitchell Jones had been murdered?
Investigators find it pretty interesting how Dante responds to this information.
Y'all trying to say I killed him?
We're just here to ask you some questions.
When detectives asked Dante when was the last time he saw Mitchell, he says September. If that is correct, that is 2 months before the murder.
Well, here's the thing.
But when detectives confront him with their evidence, his story changes completely.
After hours of questioning, Dante finally cracks.
I was there that night, okay. But it wasn't like a murder.
He said that he had acted in self-defense.
He says Mitchell attacked him with a knife.
In a gripping tale of intrigue, tireless detectives come together to unravel the mystery of the betrayal. Stay tuned for more of the Fatal Attraction Podcast.
Detectives in Cobb County, Georgia, have confronted 22-year-old Dante Holmes about the murder of aspiring actor Mitchell Jones Jr.
Initially, he denied that he had any involvement in the crime, and when confronted with evidence of his involvement, he then shifted his statement.
This is your chance to get ahead of this. Tell us what happened.
Okay.
Dante Holmes revealed in his interview that he had been in a consensual romantic relationship with the victim for a period of time that was sort of on again, off again.
But Dante says that over Thanksgiving, he decided to break things off.
Dante tells police that Mitchell asked him to come over for one last time.
It turned out to be no fond farewell.
According to Dante, Mitchell was upset about breaking up.
Is there something wrong with me?
Nah, man, it's not like that.
Well, what is it then?
Dante Holmes admitted that an argument ensued that eventually led to violence.
It was crazy. Dude wouldn't take no for an answer.
Dante claims that Mitchell then attacked him with a knife.
He slashed at me.
He said it became a struggle. That caused Mitchell to drop the knife. Dante, out of desperation, and just started stabbing Mitchell out of fear to protect his own life.
He claimed that it was self-defense.
But that doesn't mean detectives believe him.
None of that made sense when we looked at the true nature of the prolonged, sustained attack that Mitchell clearly suffered.
Instead, they believe the evidence points to Dante as the aggressor.
Talk too much. What is it? I talk too much. How do I talk too much?
Shut up!
Mitchell had a tendency to gravitate towards individuals with a aggressive personality type. Dante may have been someone who had poor emotional regulation, so it would make sense that he would assert this rage onto Mitchell in such a grueling manner.
Dante's actions after the attack strengthened detectives' argument.
If it would have been self-defense, he would have called the police and he would have stayed there. Second of all, he wouldn't have thought to take the cell phone.
He had taken the cell phone so he could hide evidence.
He knew what he was doing.
Please help.
Face the wall. You're under arrest.
When I got to call Mitchell's mom and tell her the news, I remember her crying on the phone and me coming almost into tears because we both felt that relief that I finally was able to give her the answers she was looking for.
Now, all they have to do is convince a jury that it was Dante who'd attacked Mitchell.
We were prepared to go to court and fight this case, knowing that the defense would be self-defense.
But in the end, Dante decides not to fight.
To our surprise, on the eve of trial, Dante Holmes came to court, entered a guilty plea.
I'm very satisfied with that because that indicates that he knows that this was not self-defense.
After he pleads guilty to the murder, Dante is sentenced to life in prison.
It's 30 years from the date of the offense before he's eligible for parole. It doesn't mean that he gets it, it just means he's eligible for consideration.
Although Mitchell's family is determined to see that never happens.
I don't think he should ever see the light of day again.
There really is no such thing as closure when you have such a horrific crime, such as Mitchell's death.
There's no weight off my shoulder. I miss my son.
The reality of same-sex violence is very scary. A lot of people who are in same-sex relationships don't speak on their violence because their relationship is already taboo. If you learn anything else from Mitchell, say something. Save yourself.
You always have to be careful on who's on the other side of that phone. It's always important to meet them out in public. Let your friends know. Sharing those feelings, and even if it's abusive, even if it's negative, sharing it with someone else could help stop a crime from happening.
A vibrant and charismatic life was taken too soon, leaving a profound void in the hearts of his family and friends. The heartbreaking reality of what happened to Mitchell Jones leaves a devastating emptiness and a significant impact on his loved ones. They will cherish his memory forever. Coming up on the next episode of the Fatal Attraction Podcast.
She was a kind-hearted young woman who dreamed of making the world a better place.
She wanted to make a difference.
She loved people, to help people.
And she fell in love with a man who shared her passion for helping others.
She was totally infatuated.
Things started to move fairly quickly.
But when she disappeared, her loved ones demanded answers.
A young college student known for her kindness and dedication to helping others, pursuing a career in social work, tragically vanishes, leaving her friends, family, and a community deeply concerned about her safety and well-being. Detectives are on the hunt. Tune in to the next episode of the Fatal Attraction Podcast. We will see you in the next episode.
Get the Angel Reese special at McDonald's now. Let's break it down. My favorite barbecue sauce, American cheese, crispy bacon, pickles, onions, and a sesame seed bun, of course. And don't forget the fries and a drink. Sound good? Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
At participating restaurants for a limited time.